The Parent Network offers parent resources that will be sure to enhance not just your parenting, but your overall life. So, if you're interested in becoming a part of the Parent Network membership, go ahead and click the links that are provided in the show description and check us out. Today, I am joined with a special guest. You all know that I've been in conversation just with a few parents and just discussing life after divorce and what led up to that, the emotion behind it. And so today I am joined with Junita Tinsley, and we are going to get into a really good conversation just about motherhood life. We'll talk a little bit about what life after divorce has been like. But if you want to catch some goodness, y'all, go check out the live that we did on Wellness Wednesday. You can look it up on YouTube under the Parent Network. Junita is a woman of many talents. We met actually on her podcast, her platform. And I really believe that in this time, like God is just really connecting people to really share stories, but also to collaborate. And so this is very much a collaborative effort, but not just stopping here. I'm eager to see, whatever it is that God wants to do. As we know, parenting cannot be done by itself. You need people who've been there, you need people who are there. And then also, just because you don't want to be fat and lazy, you want to have people that you can pour into. And so I am excited to just continue in this dialogue with her. She's going to introduce herself. She is a mother of four. Like I said, a woman of many talents. She has her podcast, the Momma Work It podcast, where you can find episodes on there. She collaborates a lot. I've listened to quite a few of her episodes and it has blessed me. And so without further ado, y'all, she's going to introduce herself to you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that intro. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Junita Tinsley, and yes, I am the founder of the Momma Work It podcast that I started a couple of years ago. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that my voice needed to be heard in other voices as well. I really love to collaborate and I love to hear other people's stories because I feel like part of my story is in that story and it's just so relatable. And other people need to hear it so they can feel set free. I am a mom of four. My oldest is 18 and my youngest is 9. Sometimes I got to think about the ages. But I have all girls, beautiful, beautiful young girls that are they're just so special to me. They're so special. I am a single mom at the moment, a divorcee, however you want to say it, for a few years now. And hence why we are going to be talking about life after divorce and parenting and all that good stuff. I have dabbled in a little bit of e-commerce and KDP book publishing, all those good things that I feel like where just trying to gain an extra stream of income. It's called Mama Work It for a reason. So I figure out ways to get extra income and help others do that as well. I love designing. I also have a business called The Brander, to where I work on business cards. I help people publish their own books. Whatever has to do with designing and branding, I'm all up in it. I'm trying to learn things as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. And before we start, I want to thank you so much, Ashley, again, for allowing me to collab with you. It is always an honor, and I do not take it lightly. Just being on the Parent Network, I know we are going to have great conversation because every time I say I'm with you, it's going to be therapeutic, and I'm going to get a pour as well. If I'm pouring out, I feel like I'm going to get a pour as well, poured into me. So yeah.
All right, y'all, listen, buckle up. This is going to be an amazing, amazing episode. One thing that I do want to say is she has such a humble spirit, and I think it's so important when we have experienced trials, when we have experienced life, as we say, life us, that we don't come out with just like this. haughty mindset of I know everything. And so always having just such a teachable mindset is important. And that is one thing that I have noticed concerning her. And so listen, y'all, we're gonna get into this episode because it is going to be good. It's unscripted. As always, y'all know how these podcasts go with me. I may give them a few questions ahead of time, but generally we're just in conversation because people want the authentic us. It's okay to be prepared. Yes, be prepared. It's okay to, kind of think about certain things, but the best conversations come when it's just pure, authentic flow. And so that's what we are going to do. So let's get into it. Kind of just talk to us about, I always start off most of my podcast episodes with just talking about the life of the person. We sometimes want to just dig into what happened in a situation, in a segment of our life, but kind of just talk to us about life, your life in general, from childhood, leading up to any significant roles that you want to share with us.
Okay, cool. So I grew up around all women, around all very strong women. I didn't know my father. I heard that he passed away before I was born. And I think, well, not that I think. So my mom was a drug addict. My dad was a drug addict. So I never really had a two-parent household growing up. And I feel like that really did something to me in a way as growing up because I always wondered, like, what is it like to have a father? Like, what is it like, even though I was around strong women? My grandma raised me. My mom, came around later on, and my aunt also raised me as well. When my mom, when she was on drugs, she gave me to my grandma. She said, "Listen, I can't take care of her anymore. I need you to take her." And that was around like maybe 4 or 5 years old. So grew up with my grandma. She lived in a senior citizens home. So that's where I grew up, very sheltered, very loved. It wasn't that I needed anything or wanted for anything. I got everything that I could possibly have wanted. I was only a child for a while. But I was still lacking. For some reason, there was still like a void there. Like, does my mom love me? Like, why didn't I get to see my father? Do I have siblings? I felt like I still wanted something. Even though I was never mistreated, I was never even spanked, So I remember every time I would get yelled at or in trouble, it would be for the smallest things. I would always ask, "Where's my mom?" or "I want my mom." And I know that would get them like really angry because they would say, like, "Your mom's not here. Your mom is a drug addict. She is not able to take care of you. You have people that are able to take care of you. What is wrong with you?" So grew up with that for a while.
They was given the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't want to accept that. I was like, no, but because I remember, some of us have like photographic memories. I can remember back when I was 3, when I was 4, like my life before my grandma had took me over full time. I remember going out and playing when it was light outside and coming home when the street lights went on. Like my mom didn't really, she barely raised me. I feel like the neighborhood did. So like
Mhm.
I was happy there. I was happy, riding bikes. I was like 4 years old riding a 15 speed. They taught me how to ride a bike. We would make up dances in the parking lot. Like we would play kickball. Like those are the things that I remember. We would play tag. But there are certain other things that happened to me while like because my mom wasn't watching me. A TV had fell on my head and it was to the point where I could have died, but she was trying to get her fix rather than watching out for me. I remember when I thought this guy, he was my dad. So light, like he didn't look anything like me, but I called him dad, and he was actually my mom's sugar daddy. So had no idea. Yeah, so we lived in the same house, but they had separate rooms. He would have his room, she would have her room, and guess what? I have my own room. So like I really felt like I had it made. And I thought that that was normal. But one thing that I knew that wasn't normal is that he would take me into his Cadillac, and right before school, he would be running around looking for her. So he would drive around, cussing up a storm, like, "Where is she?" Because my mom would go out on these, I don't know what you want to call them, these runs, and she wouldn't come home until like late in the morning. And he didn't mind taking me to school, but he was worried about her. He was worried about me. So, like, that's how my life was before my grandma took me. So when she took me, I knew what strong women were, right? My grandma, my aunt. And then when my mom got saved, because she wasn't always like that, I was around like maybe 10 years old. She had got saved, and God did a great work in her life. And she is not afraid to tell her testimony. That's why I'm not afraid to say it either, because part of her testimony is mine. And, I just learned I learned what strong women are. Like my grandma, she probably was married, but he wasn't around. My aunt was married at one point, but she had got divorced, and my mom was never married. So like it was, this is what I knew, but I still had that yearn for a man. Like I just wondered, and I was curious, how is a man supposed to treat me? Never knew. Um, as I got older, uh, I did live with my mom, and my mom was very strict because, she's saved now. So it's either what does darkness have to do with light? And I'm 16. So now she's trying to learn how to raise a 16-year-old. And I want to date. I want to go to the movies with my friends. Like, I want to do things that normal teenagers do. And it was no, 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 no. So I wowed out. 18, I couldn't wait till 18. I was like, you can't tell me nothing when I turn 18. I'm going to do all the things that you said I couldn't do. Got myself a belly button piercing, lost my virginity. I went to parties. I lived that life and ended up getting pregnant at 20. Had my first baby at 21. And it was all heartache from there because what I was looking for, knowing that I didn't have a father, what I was looking for a man to love me. But it made it seem like on my end, I was just fast. I was just someone that, like she just couldn't get her life together. Had one kid, and then 3 years later had another kid by the same man. And then I didn't want to be a stereotype. I didn't want to be a statistic. So I wanted a husband. And that's what I did. I got myself a husband so that I didn't have to feel like, my two daughters are going to grow up without a dad. The biggest mistake of my life, because I didn't marry for the right reasons. I married because I wanted a whole and complete family, not because, I figured, I love them enough. I love them enough to know that, like whatever we're going through, we could work it out. I would have been a perfect candidate for Love is Blind and Married at First Sight because I was like, we could work whatever out. You know what I'm saying? I'll learn to love anybody. I just don't want to be alone. That was
I'm
my
gonna
thing.
pause you right there. I wrote down some stuff, so if y'all see me like with my head down, it's because I'm writing down some stuff. Because it's like, oh, hold on, let me just dig just a little
It's
into
a lot.
this. And so I want to go back to the point where when your mother received, that transformation, the deliverance,
Hmm.
and then you transitioned back with her. Kind of talk to us a little bit about like what that was like going from living with your grandma to now, okay, now I'm going back to my mom at such a unique age, and such an age where it's like, ooh, I'm trying to do what I want to do.
Yep. I thought it was going to be easy. I thought that we could pick up where we left off, but realizing I wasn't that little girl anymore.
Yeah.
And my mom, like, she was very, very into church and very into God. Like, she prayed every day, all the time. Like, there was no compromising with her. And I didn't understand that because I was like, it's all about family. And she's like, but it's all about God. And we couldn't really gel the two together. So she didn't understand me, and I didn't understand her. And she was
Mm.
also doing ministry at that point. So I was like, I wasn't a preacher's kid. I was a ministry brat. So like we lived in church. Literally on campus, lived in church. She was over a woman's home. So if I wanted to get my hair braided or whatever, she would be like, not right now. I would get so upset. I would be like, what do you mean not right now? We would argue all the time. The women in the home, they would help take care of me while she did, what she did. And I had like, 20 moms instead of just one mom. So I felt like I was second.
Let me ask you this, y'all. My brain
Mhm.
is like, boom! It's like fire cracking off because this is, while it's such a complexity in
Yeah.
nature, it's very simple, but there's so much richness to pull from this. And you just said something. You said, you guys clashed a whole lot, and she was so heavily involved in ministry that subsequently meant that other women were still mothering you. And how was that, like, mentally and emotionally, if you can kind of recall that? Because we started off at 3 and you remembered her in one
Mhm.
way, and you thought, okay, this is normal. The streets are helping to basically raise me, and the sugar daddy is dropping me off at school. Now I'm transitioning to my grandmother. Now I'm transitioning back to her. And we can't seem to find a medium, because before it was the drugs that were taking over. Now it seems as Jesus is taking over. What did that kind of look like for you, and in developing your own relationship with God?
I didn't have a relationship with God. I felt like my mom knew better. She taught me or told me what to do. So my relationship with God was like really like, so my mom told me to pray at this time, so that's what I'm gonna do. She even put me in ministry during the summer. It was like we all lived in like one house together. It was like a mentorship program. And I'm not saying any of that was bad because it trained me. Our ministry at the time was like a training type of ministry. So I learned some things. I learned how to pray. I learned how to speak in tongues, but it was all because someone told me to. But I was very used to when my mom, you said something that made me really realize, yes, other people took care of me most of my life, right? My mom was present, but other people really took that role as like mothering. And I was used to it. So when other mothers were mothering me, even though they didn't really have their own kids around, I would come home from school, I would have a grilled cheese waiting for me or food waiting for me because I was hungry. And it wasn't really her that was making it. It was the women because they were learning how to, be put back into society again. So they were cooking, they were cleaning. I was used to it. I didn't even mind it. Only time we clashed was when I felt like I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And she wasn't really being a mom at that point. But yeah, I was riding on her coattail in regards to spirituality. I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to read. I wanted to have fun with my friends. So when I was told, you're going to pray, you're going to read, that was something that, I did because she told me to. It wasn't easy. But, I didn't go down without a fight, but I did it. And I did have other Christian friends as well that were doing the same thing. The reason why I loved her church so much when she, came a part of that program when she got clean is because I felt like I belonged. They didn't make fun of me. They didn't, shun me. They were like, oh, a new kid, come play with us. So when she put me in that ministry house, it was everyone doing the same thing. So it was easy to serve God because everyone was doing it. So I just followed suit. I think my real relationship came when I didn't follow suit anymore. When you say you're
Yeah.
going to get a divorce and that's not you following suit because they want you to stay in your marriage. And I was like, yeah, no. And I was in my 30s at that point. So that's when I found like I really felt God and I really had a relationship with him, which is crazy.
Yeah, no, I just kind of wanted to, like, walk this through for those that are listening, because there's some key points that we kind of have to extract from there. And one of the things that I took away was just like, you know, while there can be transformation that happens in the life of someone, where they're no longer addicted to something that has taken them away from another person, we don't often see or even dialogue about how, because they were so heavy in one area, they immerse themselves into another thing that
Yeah.
really tries to, and this has nothing to do with, God. It's just the similitude of, I was on this over here, now I'm fired up for this over here. It can't be a balance. There was really no balance there. And that's, what I kind of wanted to highlight there, because you said it was normal. It was like, okay, you're immersed in this thing over here. While it is positive, while we love God over here on the Parent Network, y'all know that. But it's like, in the reality, we still didn't develop relationship. We
No.
still didn't grow in things. And so now it was more like, this is what I need you to do. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Just, as you were talking
Yeah.
about the 18-year-old you, and you got married. Go ahead, pick up from there, girl.
Rebellious. Before I go to that, you brought up a really good point, right? Like, just because as parents, I'm gonna say this for parents because I even dealt with it when I backslid and I had came back to God. I thought everything was supposed to be all peachy, right? All fine. Like, well, I'm doing good now, so everything should follow suit. but yet you don't realize you got to do practical things. You got to say I'm sorry. You got to rebuild those
Yeah.
relationships. Like if you try to ignore that and just think like, oh, God's going to fix it. Oh, he's a fixer. He can fix it, but what's your part in it, you know? So that came later on in life. Legit, like 4 kids later, like now we're rekindling our relationship and dealing with things we should have dealt with a long time ago. So 18, got my belly button pierced, lost my virginity, did all the things. And I was still searching and looking for love. I'm like, where are you, love? Like, why don't you love me? I love you. You don't love me. What's the problem? The problem was my self-worth, me thinking that, I was missing something this whole time. And I didn't correlate it with me not having a father. I knew I didn't have one, but I didn't realize me missing out on that so much was the reason why I was allowing every guy to walk over me and do what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did correlate it with it, because I learned eventually, like, okay, you're looking for that father figure. I love me some older men. I could not stand any guy that was younger than me. I was like, you are just a kid, just a baby. I'm not dealing with it.
Y'all, she
I want
sound like
someone
me.
older. Come on, give me somebody mature.
Ooh, and we know that age has nothing to do with maturity, but we'll talk about
Y'all.
that later.
Not at all. I would date like guys that were like 10 years older, 7 years older. Like it wasn't, I'm like, okay, you're not mature. Okay, maybe the next one will be. And I just could not learn my lesson. I always picked up the same type of guy, just in a different body. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what is going on? Until I realized, girl, it's you. Like it legit is you. It's not them, because if they feel like they have a chance with you, you're picking up the same type of guys. It's only because they feel like that they can get over on you. Why do they feel like they can get over on you?
Period. I just want everybody to take a deep breath right there and release, because coming to that awareness that it's not them, it's you, sometimes can be such a shock, which it really shouldn't be, because we really know that it's us. But in the pursuit of, like she said, love, in the pursuit of acceptance, in the pursuit of whatever it is,
Mm.
you find yourself still at a deficit.
Mm-hmm. So until I went back to God, because God has been chasing me this whole time. Whenever my old pastor's wife used to always tell me, I love when you're pregnant, because when you're pregnant, like you serve God for real, for real. Like she was like, just stay pregnant. And I know that may sound really bad, sound really bad, but no lie, when I was pregnant, like I allowed God to use me. I was on the worship. It was almost like I was back under like the umbrella, like the safety of like God's presence, and nothing could stop me. Yes, I went through things, hormonal changes, but it was like I was really deep in there with God. And the moment I popped that baby out, it was like, all right, Janita's back again, because now she's looking for a dad. Now she's looking for this. Now she's looking for that. But it was a separation to where I couldn't drink, I couldn't party. I probably could have, but for me, I wouldn't, because it just didn't look
Right.
right for me. So that's when God really got a hold of me. But yeah, man, God was chasing me the whole time. And while he was chasing me, he was really trying to show me and tell me, like, I love you. Will you let me love you? Like, you feel like these men out here, they haven't. You're looking for it. I got it. So why not? Every time I got pregnant, I got slowed down. Even when I was
Mm-hmm.
married, because I did not marry for the right reasons. I thought that by getting married, it would fix everything. And when we had our first kid, because I think it was like a good year, maybe like a good 9 months where everything was great. And then after that, it just started falling off. So I was like, let's have a kid. And then that didn't work. Let's buy a home. Let's have another kid. Let's get a dog. None of that worked. And God is still like, so you gonna let me love you? Or so finally, after the divorce, that's when I said, Lord, okay, you got to do what you got to do, because at this point, I got pieces of me all over the place. And I can't even take those back. Like, that's too much work for me. I'm
Yeah.
very used to, I can do it on my own, I can do it myself. And at that point, I said, God, I can't do it anymore. You have to take the will. You got to put these pieces back together, because I don't even know who I am anymore. I lost a lot of things and a lot of people when I got divorced. And that's when I feel like I should have gone crazy, but I didn't, only because of the grace of God.
That's so important. Oof, y'all, she has said so much just in that, and the way in which like I am processing just listening to some of this, it goes back to something that she said in the beginning. She said I was raised by strong women. And in the fact that her being raised by strong women, we don't understand a lot of the time how much we're picking up on our environment. And they have this thing where it's called nature and nurture. And in our environment can nurture us. Our environment is the nature in which we're in. It's literally that. It's our habitat. But what's in that environment, it's what's nurturing us. It's what's pouring into us. And so she literally saw what she lived out. I had wrote this down in my notes because I said, okay, Holy Spirit, like what you saying in that is, she said, my grandmother might have been married, but we didn't see the husband. Aunt wasn't married. Mom, wasn't married. And so there were things that she saw. So we inevitably pick up those habits and those traits. And when we're in pursuit of whatever it is, whether it's love, money, fame, we are going to do anything to get that.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we don't even know the sacrifices that we're making, whether they're internal sacrifices or external sacrifices, to really pursue the thing that we think we need. And she said that God was literally chasing after her. And I can very much concur. Our stories intersect a lot in that because it's like, okay, I want to have this idea of things. I want to look a certain way. For me, I didn't want to have two men, you know what I'm saying, as fathers. And what ended up happening, because I thought, oh, yeah, I got this. I didn't have this. And subsequently, how my mom was in that area of her life, as far as even down, y'all, even down, and I've shared this before, and it's in the book, Grace to Pivot, shameless plug, go order it. Um, Even down to the fact of the nationalities of my son's dad and me and my brother's dad. My brother's father was Belizean. My youngest son's father is Belizean. My dad is American. My oldest son's dad is American. We don't see how these cycles, y'all, can
Right.
perpetuate itself if we don't go to the source, the one who knows our end from our beginning. And so, as parents, yes, we want the best for our children, but ultimately, sometimes we're looking for the best for us to heal that inner wound within us. And so, she said, after she had the divorce, is when that collision with the Lord came. And so, kind of just talk to us about, what it looked like, even leading up to the divorce and processing after.
Leading up to it, so there was, now can I just say, I've never comfortably said like I didn't marry for the right reasons. I don't I don't take that lightly, and I feel really ashamed saying it because I know like that's not good, right? Like I'm pretty sure if my ex-husband heard it to this day, he probably would be heartbroken, right? But it's the reality of it. Like it's not like I saw him, I picked him and I said he would be a good one. But
Right.
I felt like a sort of a connection. So I said, oh, we can build on that.
Yeah.
But that's it's not the way it should have been. Um so I felt like the connection that we could have built, it just never came. Like I was looking for something that wasn't there. So I was trying to build it. I was trying to fix him. I was trying to make it work. And I knew what I was getting myself into before I got married. I knew it. On the day of on the day of me getting married, I saw certain signs and I was afraid to be like, I'm sorry y'all came all this way. This isn't going to happen. We already signed the marriage certificate. So technically we were already married. It was just a ceremony.
Right.
But everything, the pride in me said, no, you're going to stay and you're going to stick this out and you're going to make it work. So I said, okay, we'll just go ahead and do it. Certain things I saw, like anger, just like very short circuited towards the girls, towards myself. Like he just couldn't get a handle on life. Like everything was just like this, and it would just like tick him off. And I said, we could fix that. That's not a problem. So as the years went on, we were married for like a good 8 years, I want to say 7, 8 years. Um, it didn't get better. So like the manipulation, it didn't get better. And I don't want to say this to talk bad about him. I know how he grew up. So there was a certain age where he just stopped growing. And I'll say that spiritually, right? It was like the 10-year-old in him, like he was just like, that's it. This is as far as I go. And I didn't understand that before I got married. But while we were, in marriage, we were both seeing a counselor at this point, and I was like, that makes so much sense. Like he can't. It's hard for him to take any type of direction from a woman because of how he grew up. Like he grew up, it was hard for him. Like he was abused when he was younger by women. And I'm not saying sexually, it was just like, he had a hard life.
Right.
So I felt like, oh, not that I Mrs. Fix It, but I wanted to embody that. Like I wanted to help that. I wanted to be there for him. I wanted to fix that part of him because I'm like, man, if we fix that part, we're golden. We can make this happen. I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't change his mindset. I couldn't change the way he thought about other women. I just couldn't do it. So when I got to the point where I said, I can't be your therapist, like it was weighing so heavy on me, it was just too much. I said, you need professional help. And he was in denial. He was like, I don't need help. I don't need help. We need help. And I'm like, we do. But in order for any couple to really get like healing or anything, you got to have together counseling, but also separate counseling too, because the root is not in you guys, it's in you. So when you sit with you and you get to the root of what's bothering you, then you could come together back to the table and be like, this is what God dealt with me with. This is what God dealt with me with. Now let's work on this together, right? That whole pyramid thing. Like we're getting closer to God together, but like we all meet at the middle because God is in the center of it. But if you're in denial of what is wrong with you, there's nothing to fix because you don't think there's anything to fix. So that became so tiring to where he would apologize and then things would be good for like a month and then it would get worse. And then, it was just the same cycle to the point where I felt like I was a referee between my kids and him because he was also a kid spiritually.
Yeah.
So it was like, why are you comparing yourself to my children? Why are you? And they were at that age where they were coming into like their preteen years. So they'll test you. And that's just what kids do. It wasn't on purpose, but he felt attacked by my children. And I'm like, how do I get this man to see that they're not attacking you? They're just being who they are, kids. So I finally made a decision and I was like, I'm gonna choose my kids. And that's what I did. And I felt shunned. Like it was almost like, are you sure you want to break up your family? Now, mind you, if I stayed in that, if something drastic would have happened, because I've seen little things, no one is in our house at night. So no one really understands what's really going on. So like if I would have stayed, something would have happened, right? Like I'm working an hour away from where we now moved to. He worked an hour away, but he got home earlier than I did. If he got short circuited one day, who's to say what could have happened? Who's to say, like, what the kids have tested him so much that, like anything could have happened and I would have blamed who? I can't blame everybody else. I would have to have blamed myself because I didn't take heed to what I felt inside of me. I truly felt that God was telling me, you got to go. Like, you got to separate, you got to go, you got to like physically move yourself. Now, when he told me that, that didn't initially mean divorce. That just meant, hey guys, we need help. I'm raising up the white flag and I'm saying our family needs help. We need counseling. Something needs to happen and it needs to happen now. Now, mind you, the church knew. The church knew and they saw, but they chose to turn their heads. And I'm not saying this out of anger anymore because I understand that when you don't know how to handle a thing, then you really don't know how. So
Absolutely.
I asked God to help me forgive a long time ago because it wasn't their fault. If you don't know how to handle, you don't know how to handle. So it wasn't taken care of because they weren't really sure what to do. So I took matters into my own hands. We started doing counseling together. He stopped. I kept going. So when we were doing counseling, they were guiding me and giving me, instructions, and I followed every bit of those instructions. But because it wasn't from the church that I was going to, they kind of felt like they were blindsided. So they didn't know what was happening. And I was doing my best to keep everybody in the loop. But when you're hearing from the outside, you're breaking up your family and going to meeting after meeting after meeting. What's going to happen financially to the house that you guys just bought? I was like, at that point, I said, y'all can have it all. Take it all. Take the house. Take the money. Me and my kids, that's all I want. We out. So I look like the bad guy, which is fine. And I had made certain choices. Like I said, we can't both be in the same church. So I'm going to go church looking, church hopping, whatever you want to call it. And the answers I got from that, or responses I got, was, we understand, you got to do what you got to do. This is from my leadership at the time. But when him and I got into tiffs, because we're still living in the same house, we went from sleeping in the same bed to us sleeping on different floors, to us packing up and sleeping in just one room while he had the whole house and we had one room, to him just moving out altogether. On the day that we're supposed to move, he wasn't anywhere to be found, which is fine. But he had his story and I had mine. So people are hearing different things. And they're kind of like, it's almost like the church separated between his side and my side. And of course, I had some people on my side, but it was almost like because he decided to stay, everyone was on his side. So I'm just like, dang. So if he did bully me or if we did get into an argument, it was more so like, someone said, are you okay? And like, what about me? I didn't feel like I was able to call anyone and say, hey, can you like mediate this? Because
Right.
we don't know what we're doing. It was a couple of years because of COVID before we actually got divorced. And at this point, I'm already at another church. I'm thriving. The kids are doing well. Him and I are trying to work out a schedule where he can still see the girls or whatever. I'm very scared at this point just because of how our relationship was. I just say yes to everything. I was like, okay, yes, you can have them every weekend. You could do this, you could do that. But I was going from house to house. I was struggling. And anybody on the outside looking in, they would have said, the Lord must not be with her because she can't seem to find a home. She's sleeping on people's couches. Obviously, she's in sin because this shouldn't be happening if she wasn't. Even my own mom was like, you sure you heard from God? I was like, I know I heard from God. Now, if this is supposed to be my process and this is how I'm supposed to be moving, then honestly, God's going to get the glory some kind of way. So after that, once the divorce was over, I had the support of the church. He got a lawyer. I didn't have any money. Friends of mine got together. They paid for a lawyer for me, thousands upon thousands of dollars because I did not have it. So God's provision was definitely there for me. And
Yeah.
that's how I knew that God was in the midst of it. People
Yeah.
would pray for me and not even know what I was going through. And they would say, God is proud of you. That's the reason why I kept going with the whole process, because you don't know I'm going through a divorce right now. You don't know what I'm contemplating, and you're telling me God's proud of me, then I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
And finally, it was final 2021. And to say that it's been easy, it hasn't. Um, I have to learn to forgive over and over and over again. I have to learn to be gracious over and over and over again. Yes, we went through mediation where we have a parenting plan and, we had some things that we had to work on after the divorce. But when I say that paper is just a piece of paper, it is, because things can change. Jobs can change. All kinds of stuff can change. So, like, do we navigate well? Absolutely not. Our co-parenting sucks. And I'm just saying this out of transparency because it's not easy when this is God's son, you're God's daughter, but you have to try and be the mature one and try to think like, I'm not the better parent. I'm just a parent just like anybody else, and not try to take control. It's hard. And we spoke about this on the live, like knowing that you got to pray for this person, knowing that you got to give this person grace, knowing that you have to be mature about it because God is doing something in you. Because while you were in that marriage, there's just some things that God won't take you out of because he's trying to teach you something.
Yeah.
And I
I'm
wish
gonna
like he would just, yeah.
I want to pause you right there because I want to give you a moment to just breathe. Like I have transitioned now as I'm listening to you and even watching you, and I make no apologies ever, and y'all know that, about anything that transpires on this podcast, because this is God's podcast. That's the first and foremost thing. This is God's podcast. But I want to give you a moment to just breathe, because you came to a point and you paused, but then you kind of just, boop. You know how we have the speed bumps in the street? And it's
Yep.
like, oh, I see the speed bump coming and I'm gonna slow down, but it's like, oh, I gotta really get somewhere. So I'm gonna just like hump over it real quick. And so I just want
Yeah.
to kind of rewind it back and just allow you to just go over that speed bump in grace because it's not easy. I've never been married, never been divorced. I've only had, relationships. But just listening, like I said, our stories collide in a lot of different ways. And in understanding that you can meet someone and you can think that you can fix them and you can't fix them a lot of times. We're dating from potential when we're broken, and so it's two broken people coming together trying to make one complete picture, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to work, especially when neither one of you are really trying to do it God's way. And so there's always going to be a collision, there's always going to be friction, there's always going to be something. That's literally just the way it is. And so number one, I just want to say this to you: give yourself grace, because you know what you heard from God was true. And even though the people that we desire to support us the most, that we think are supposed to be there the most, she said something that was so profound. And it was like, I want to hit on this. It's like, just because, we're in a church setting and we're around church people, and I'm going to emphasize this very heavily, they're people. And so they find themselves in situations, like you said, where they don't know how to deal with something. And a lot of times when you are religious in mindset, you don't know how to seek God for someone else. And so you think that this is a cross that I'm to carry. And that's not necessarily the truth. One of the best things that we can do for people when we don't know what to do is to listen. That's it. Just listen. Hold space for them to vent, for them to cry, for them to scream, for them to sit in silence. You don't know, but just being present is enough. And the scripture says, y'all don't quote me on this, I see the verse, I know it's in Psalms, I believe it's Psalms 46, where it says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in the time of trouble. And so the one that is really for us at all junctures of life where we find ourselves is going to be God, because he's present in everything. And when we allow for him to be present in parenting, when we allow for him to be present in transitions like divorce and grief and loss and triumph, whatever space we find ourselves in, we have to be able to sit with him and matriculate with him in that time, because people are absolutely going to be people. They only have such a capacity for some things. And I talk about this often when it comes to capacity. Like this right here holds 40 ounces of water. If I kept pouring beyond the capacity that it could hold, it's going to spill out and it's going to be wasted. And so we have to understand sometimes that when we are looking for people to hold what's in us and they only have so much, we're essentially wasting our time trying to get them to see us, see how we feel, see what we're going through, side with us, be with us, because they don't have it to hold. And as you're going through this time, because I feel like um there's still parts of you that have not grieved everything. And in the grief of moments where simple things like birthdays, where it's like, I wish, we were together to celebrate birthdays, instead of having to do things separately, because I know a lot about co-parenting with someone that's very, very difficult to co-parent with, that wants to see your demise, that wants to see, because they're hurting. It's all because of that, because they're hurting. I'm very acquainted with that. And really, like you said, we talked about this on the live, but having to realize that because you've matured in an area, it is now going to be God's grace that carries you in this process to mature and help kind of bring like a stability. That's how I look at it sometimes. Like when you're in this co parenting journey with people who are not where you are and, are struggling to get where you are, God uses you almost as a buffer, as a foundation to say, you know what? I don't like it. This is ghetto. God, like, where is my vindication? Where is my this? Where is my that? But God has a really beautiful way of always showing us that, hey, do you remember where you were? And so if you remember where you were and your heart is my heart and my heart is your heart, I need you to be a bridge. I need you to be an intercessor. I need you to do all of these things to help show my light and my love. Because a lot of times we're going to be the only representation of Jesus that some people see, y'all. When you're dealing with co-parents that may not be, of the faith and in the faith, it is your responsibility to extend grace. That does not mean, hear what I'm saying, that does not mean that you allow them to walk over you. That does not mean that you do not have boundaries. That does not mean that you do not open up your mouth and speak up for yourself, advocate on behalf of the parenting space. That's not what I'm saying. You absolutely have to do that, but you have to be strategic sometimes. Y'all know how they used to say, pick your battles. You got to pick your battle because you can't always want to be right. Okay. Just kill the fight to always want to be right, y'all. All right.
Yeah.
I want y'all to pick that up. Kill the fight to always want to be right because sometimes it's not worth it. If your children are safe, that's worth it. If you are safe, that's worth it. And so we have to learn to navigate what that looks like. And I remember experiencing during COVID, it was a really, 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 really unique time with my co-parent because I would get uh, threatening messages from him and I could not respond. I think I was able to respond to one thing, and that was because I was like, you know what, I'm fed up, okay? And you not gonna keep coming at me like you don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And after that, it was just like, nah, let me really take this in prayer because more than this is a natural thing, this is a spiritual battle. And whatever it is that's trying to come up against me by way of you naturally, I have the authority because I'm in Christ to legislate this thing spiritually, and you're gonna have to shut up. You're gonna have to stop. And that's literally what happened, y'all. And so for you, um, Janita, I just want you to really be encouraged. Really, really, really be encouraged that you're going to have highs. We're going to experience really, really amazing highs, and then there are going to be some lows that happen. But even in those lows, like God is with you. Moses told the children of Israel, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. See his deliverance on your behalf. And a lot of times we're so accustomed, again, going back to, I seen strong women. So I know I'm supposed to be strong, but y'all, listen, hear this from somebody. Let me show y'all this real quick because a friend of mine, she made this for me and I love it. And it says, thug life. Y'all see how that says thug life. And sometimes we want to continue on in that nature of thug life. We want to continue on in that nature of, I'm strong. I got this. I'm not going to break. But what God had to do was break me into a space of vulnerability and into a space of just like, this hurts. I don't like this. I didn't sign up for this. And the truth of the matter is, we kind of did sign up for it. We just didn't know the totality of what we
Yes.
were signing up for. But there's so much grace in it. There's so much love in it because the love of God, y'all, the scripture says it covers a multitude of sin. And sin is really just to miss the mark. When we disobey, we miss the mark. When we want to do what we want to do, we miss the mark. But God's love does not come for us in a way that man's love would. where it's like, you know what, you're so stupid. How could you do that? Those are the inner thoughts that we think. And then we place that dialogue on ourselves. And so sometimes you may go through that period where you feel like, I'm stupid. I shouldn't have did this. Am I living? Should I have? We question ourselves a lot of times. But I want you to know, like, don't question yourself. You know exactly what God said for you to do. And though you find yourself in the valley of the shadow of death, that is really a shadow. And anything that's a shadow, it appears bigger than what it is. It just appears bigger than what it is. But the scripture says, but you are with me. And so, what I want you to know, Junita, is that God is with you. He's with you. Like he's with you. He's with you in the highs. He's with you in the lows. He's with you when nobody sees you crying. He's with you when you're smiling. He's with you at all costs because we go through not for ourselves, but for others, for our lives to literally be a blueprint to say, you know what? I've been where you are. Come on, sit down. Let's talk about it. Let me share some wisdom with you because that's what it is. He's endowed you to be able to have wisdom for those that are next, for those that are going to come up to you and say, you know what? Can I just talk to you about whatever it is? I feel like God has given you that spirit of counsel. And sometimes you kind of shy away from it because you think, well, who am I to talk about this? But God wants you to know, but you're very qualified to talk about this. Even though we're still matriculating through certain things, there's such wisdom that can come from just allowing Him to speak through us. And so today, I really just want you to be encouraged that you can speak to whatever it is that God allows to come to you. He's going to give you that wisdom to speak to it. The scripture tells us that as far as we open up our mouth, He's going to fill it. And so all He has for you to do is just open up your mouth and release. Release everything that He's saying and don't be intimidated and don't be afraid of backlash of what people are going to say, what people are going to think. Write that book. Write that book. Write that book. I remember when the Lord told me during the pandemic, I want you to write about your life. And I was like, now what you talking about? Oh, right. Like, what about my life? What do you, and I sat in this room for 30 days and wrote that book. I thought it was going to take years. He gave me a time frame, but I was like, okay, let me just sit. You ain't got nowhere else to go. Heck, you in COVID, so you might as well sit and write. And I don't talk about the book often, y'all. Don't talk about that book often. And everybody tells me, like, why don't you tell people about your book? Why don't you talk about your book? And because there was still levels of shame that I was experiencing. But now that He has like totally delivered me from it, it's like I can talk about it, I can share it. And so y'all gonna hear a lot more about it, but you need to write the book. Write the book.
Amen.
Write the book because it has nothing to do with you shaming other people. Like you said in the beginning, your mom's testimony is a part of your story. And so every piece of your life, every chapter of your life that you've experienced where other people have intertwined, it's just a part of your story. So write that book and help free others from what they are experiencing, what they have experienced. Y'all, I told y'all I make no apologies. You know, that was just a little station break. We paused for the cause of Holy Spirit over here on this podcast.
Thank you.
You are welcome. You are welcome. It's so important that, you know, we don't roll over them speed bumps, y'all. Listen, it can be so like automatic for us. It's just like I went through it. I experienced it. You know what I'm saying? And so boom, I can just go through it. As I was listening to her talk, I said, "Ooh, Ashley, that sound like you, girl. And you used to just be like, yeah, 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 boop, 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 boop." And we don't pause to breathe. We don't pause to sit and say, "Ooh, I think that kind of hurts a little bit, but I don't have the time right now to let that thing come up." And anybody who knows me and the ladies from the parent membership can tell you, I'm going to tell you, pause. Let that thing come up. Whatever that is, that lump in your throat, that ouch in the middle of your stomach, that heart palpitation where your heart is beating really fast, that's because God wants to still heal that area. We don't have to just go over it. The speed bump says 15 miles per hour, but sometimes we want to go 30 because I just want to get through it. I just want to get over it. And so I just want to encourage you that when you get to that speed bump next time, don't hit that gas brake there. Allow your foot to come off the gas, cover the brake, and roll over that. And what comes up from that in that moment, allow yourself to feel it and then go over it.
Appreciate that. You know what's crazy is when you want to go through it so fast or you want to get over it, it comes up again.
Yeah.
Like the situation comes up again and you'll have to figure out, do I want to slow down and sit with this, or can I just, speed through it again, or can I avoid it somehow? Can I go around that speed bump? um so yeah, I really appreciate that. When you said that something had came up recently that made me deal with it, my mom got ordinated to be an evangelist a couple months ago, I think in like end of April. And she invited everybody. So people from our old church, like family, friends. And I was like, dang, I got to deal with these people again. Like, oh no. And it wasn't everyone, but it was certain people, like, my godfather, like he he's the one. When I was, I think, like 11, he was like, I'm gonna be your godfather. Like he put himself in my life and I'm
Mhm.
totally grateful for that. Like he was like a father figure to me in a sense. And when at that moment when I felt like the church was taking sides, like that's what I was really talking about. I felt like he took my ex-husband's side. And we stopped talking, and that hurt to the core because I'm like, you put yourself into my life, like you inserted yourself into my life, and you always made an attempt to see how I'm doing, and now I feel like I can't even call you if I need you. The only father figure that I really really knew.
Mhm.
And his response was to that, maybe like a year later, was, I felt like you needed space. I was like, space is the last thing that I needed when it came to that. And I went down a rabbit hole, like, well, that just shows how much you really knew me and blah, 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 and see the church folks. And I was so bitter to the point where I just stopped talking to him and his wife altogether. And we seen each other about a couple of years ago for like a funeral, but it was literally like hi and bye. And I was like, I did it. I did it. I said hi to those people, walked away. But then for my mom's ordination, they stayed a while. And he said how he really felt. He was like, I felt hurt. I felt this. And I was like, you felt hurt.
Right.
So we had a chance to like hash it out. We dealt with it. And like, and we're still friends with each other on Facebook. Like he'll see my stuff, I'll see his, but we would never like comment. So after he was like, I mean it, like, I need you in my life. I'm like, okay, cool. I commented happy Father's Day, I think, and he said that was the best. Like you just made my Father's Day. And it made me tear up because I was like, okay, like I'm not even your blood, but I felt like we were back to where we were, even though I know we can't be fully back to where we were, but
Right.
like our relationship got stronger because of that, because I chose to say like, all right, let's just go ahead and deal with it. I say what I need to say, you say what you need to say. Let's forgive one another and move forward, because that was just something that happened because of my divorce. You know what I'm saying? Like everything falling apart. So I thank God that you said that, and I thank God that you did that, because it reminded me of that story. And I still do feel a certain kind of way. I definitely do. I'm human.
Right.
So yeah.
And you
Yeah,
and
but I'm
and you
working through it.
and that's the beauty of it. You're working through it. I tell people this all the time. Like it has nothing to do with whether or not you are not going to feel a type of way. It's just when it's going to come up. When it's going to
Right.
come up. And when it comes up, allow it to come up. Anytime God is revealing anything to us, it's to heal. And it's an invitation to our next. And if we can learn to switch our perspective in that, like, oh, it's time to heal, it's time to deal with this, it's because I'm being invited to mature, I'm being invited to grow. It's an
Yeah.
invitation. And does healing feel good? No. It's I describe it like that is it's a beautiful chaos. Okay, it's a beautiful chaos, but it's so important that we allow ourselves to go through that, because much of the journey in life is unlearning so much that we've learned because it no longer suits us in the season that we're in and in the place that we're growing to. And so be okay with unlearning, like we talked about in the beginning. Be okay with being teachable. Okay, we don't know
Yeah.
everything. Do not
Yeah.
allow pride, in parenting to stifle you from growing. Don't do it. Our children can teach us so much. They can be the ones to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, listen, I didn't like when you did that. And if
They
we take heed to it, then that's going to bring the level of our relationship closer together. And so
right.
before we close out, kind of just talk to us about um, how you explain to the children and then what their feelings were like in all of this.
That was a tough one because I had to try not to bash him. I felt like I was telling the truth, but yeah, I can't say I'm proud of myself for how I did that. A part of our divorce agreement was like not to bash one another, to whatever. But they knew what was happening. Madison, my two youngest kids, they felt it, they understood because his oldest, she got real depressed, real depressed. So it wasn't like I had to sit down and say, like, they just knew what was happening.
Right.
They understood, like, okay, daddy's not here anymore. We're with mommy now. We only see him, every so often. Now we get like two Christmases or whatever, like, it looks like we're sharing holidays. So I really didn't have to say much. Um, for the older girls, it was the same. Like they felt more free. So the little ones were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening," and the older ones were like, "Yes, thank God, because that was ruining us." So like I kind of felt torn between the two, between the two age groups. The two older ones are not his biological, and the two younger ones are. So yeah, um, yeah, I can't say I'm proud of myself for how I handled that in telling them, or
It's a
in how
thing.
what they saw. Yeah, the arguments and all the cussing out and all that. They saw it all. So yeah,
It happens. It happens. And
yeah,
again, we give ourselves grace. And
yeah,
at the end of the day, I say this all the time, like, we operate in the role of a parent, but every single day I'm a woman and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to experience the emotions that I have outside of the roles that I have to play. And so just really learning, whoever's listening to this, if you dealt with divorce, you dealt with loss of a relationship, doesn't even have to be a romantic, but a platonic relationship. Like, we have to allow ourselves to experience those emotions and to feel them, but to give yourself grace because you're learning something new. You're learning to live in this new life. Hence, the title is Life After. So, life after divorce can be life after divorce of family, life after divorce of friendship, life after divorce of a career change. Like, however you need to take this, I want you all to really understand to give yourself grace in the process, because you're learning something new, you're unlearning something, you're healing, you're maturing, and you're going to have a whole bunch of emotions that are sometimes just going to
whole bunch.
combust like a volcano, just boom.
Yeah,
And when that happens, don't beat yourself up. But my only ask is that you do it in a healthy way. Just do it in a
yes,
healthy way. So whether that looks
yes,
like therapy, whether that looks like counseling, whether that looks like, doing it in a community group setting, however that looks like, don't isolate yourself in your time of struggle. It can feel like the worst time of your life, but it is going to be so important whether you have one friend or seven to lean into your community. Lean into your community. And if you don't have that community, I am praying that God would show you and he would
yes,
drop some people in your pathway that says, you know what, hey, we've dealt with that. We've been there, whatever that is, because we cannot walk this life out by ourselves. We're going to experience way too much to try to be an island to ourselves. And so I don't
Yes.
want to keep you any longer, Junita. If you can just leave them with just one word of encouragement, and then also where can they follow you? Put the podcast information. It's also going to be in the show description.
Awesome sauce. One thing I want to leave with you guys is don't fear your future after your life of divorce, separation, whatever it is, because if you do that, you're going to hinder what God really has for you. And I'm not saying that you want to get back with this person or get back with your, your old lifestyle, but if you fear because of a new relationship, don't give up on love. Um, at the moment, I am dating now, and my biggest thing was I'm afraid of what he might think. I'm afraid of what he might do because of someone who hates me so much. Listen, don't give up on love. Don't fear the future. Just live moving forward. Please do. Because if you don't, you will stay stuck and it's nobody else's fault but our own if we do that. You can find me on for the Mama Work It podcast. You can find me on Spotify and Apple. I believe it's called the Mama Momma Work It podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. Again, I knew this was going to be therapeutic. Thank you for my pour. I appreciate you pouring into me because I was like, I'm walking away with some things as well. I love you, Ashley, and I love you guys so much.
Thank you so much. And I love you as well. Listen, y'all, go and check out her podcast and then go follow her on social media. On Instagram, she is Mama Work It. Is that correct?
Yep, Mama Work It, or you can find me, my first and last name, Junita Tinsley, on Facebook. The Mama Work It podcast is one of the Facebook pages that I have too.
Listen,
Yeah.
y'all, go follow her. If you have any branding that you need to do, go connect with her.
Hit
Again,
me up.
this is about collaboration, y'all. We coming out of that spirit of competition. This is about collaborating because we all bring
Yes.
something to the table. So again, thank you so much for just sharing your
Thank
story with
you.
us and your time. Until next time, y'all.
Thank you.